Welcome to the Foolproof FSBO podcast. I'm Tim the FSBO guy, and this is the show that helps homeowners sell their homes without paying that $31,000 agent tax. Hey, every week I'm going to share real strategies, simple tools, and proven checklists that make selling your home yourself safe, fast, and profitable. So if you're ready to keep your equity and stay in control of your sale, you're in the right place. Let's go ahead and dive in. If you're struggling to sell your home, you usually hear only two pieces of rather lazy and stupid advice: drop the price or remodel the house. Now, for one, there's a limit to how much you can discount your price before you walk away with nothing. And two, there's a limit to how much cash you could dump into renovations before you stop seeing a return. So before you fire sell your home and before you spend a penny remodeling, I want you to take a third path. Upgrade your buyer. You see, bank underwriting standards are currently so illogical that there are thousands of high-income buyers, like business owners and entrepreneurs and investors, who can afford your home, but they can't get approved for it. Today, I'm going to show you 5 strategies to expand your buyer pool, which creates bidding wars, drives up your price, and slashes your time on market. Now, here's the math that nobody is showing you. When most people list their home, they only accept cash or conventional financing, and that's kind of standard. But here's the problem. W-2 employees and cash buyers only make up about 40% of the total buyer market. That means right now, you are fighting with every other seller in your neighborhood for the attention of a minority of buyers. And it gets worse because the 60% you're ignoring, they're not just the largest group, it's often the highest quality. I mean, we're talking about self-employed professionals pulling in 6 figures, like business owners and investors with massive portfolios. So why don't banks work with them? Well, it's simple. Banks are stuck in the 1950s. They want a steady paycheck every 2 weeks. But business owners, well, they write off their expenses. Commission earners have variable months, and banks look at that and say, oh, it must be high risk, even though these buyers often have more cash and better financial discipline than the average employee. If you bought a home recently, you know how ridiculous all of this is. You're about to buy this 6-figure asset and you have great credit, and the whole deal almost dies because, of an unexplained Netflix subscription on your credit report. It's absurd. But today, we're going to use that absurdity to your advantage. Let's start with strategy number 1. And this is the marketing bait. If you have an FHA or a VA loan from before 2022, you are sitting on a gold mine. You've probably locked in a rate somewhere between 3 and 4%. So here's the play. Instead of your buyer getting a new loan at today's rates, let's say 7%, they assume your loan balance and your rate. Well, let's walk through how the math works. So with option A and that buyer at 7%, they're paying $2,500 a month for the house down the street. But with option B, where they assume your loan, they buy your house, assume your rate, and pay $1,700 a month. Now that's $800 a month in savings. Over 30 years, that's nearly $300,000 in interest that they don't have to pay. So when you list your home with an assumable 3.5% loan in the headline, you create a frenzy. You get 12 showings in one weekend, and here's the magic trick. Sure, you might get an offer from a buyer who wants to assume the loan, but you will also attract the cash investor who will see competition heating up. They will come in with a full price cash offer just to win the deal. So you take the cash offer. You never even had to use the assumable mortgage play. You just use it as a free marketing tool to create a bidding war. A strategy number 2, this is rate manipulation. See, buyers aren't scared of your price necessarily. They're scared of the monthly payment. So if you drop your price by $15,000, well, it only saves them about $90 a month. They don't even really notice that. Instead, I want you to consider taking a fraction of that money and attack the interest rate itself. And you have 2 ways to do this. Option 1 is with a temporary buy down. This is where you pay a lump sum upfront, usually like $6,000 to $8,000, to slash their rate for the first 2 years. So if the market rate is 7%, they end up paying 5% in year 1 and 6% in year 2. This drops their payment by $400 to $500 a month immediately. And what it feels like, though, in monthly payment land is a $50,000 price cut to them. But it just costs you pennies on the dollar to make that change compared to an actual price drop. Now, option number 2 is a permanent discount point buy down. And this is where you pay to lower the rate for the life of the loan. It usually costs about 1% of the loan amount to drop the rate by 0.25%. Now, this is more expensive up front, and it does create less monthly relief than the temporary buy down, but it is powerful for buyers who are terrified of rates going up in the future. I think the pro move here, though, is to offer the temporary buy down first because it gives you the biggest monthly savings for the lowest cost. Most buyers are going to refinance within the first 5 years anyway, so I guess the question here is why pay for a 30-year discount that they're not going to use? So give them the immediate cash flow relief Keep your sale price high and stop bleeding equity. For strategy number 3, I love talking about prepaying of the hard costs. And this is one of my favorites because the math is so lopsided in our favor. Instead of dropping the price by $10,000, just offer to prepay their HOA dues or property taxes for a full year. And let's look at why the psychology on this works. A $10,000 price drop saves them about $60 a month. It's boring. But a $5,000 credit that wipes out their HOA bill saves them $400 a month immediately. You just saved yourself $5,000 and the buyer feels more relief than if you had dropped the price. And when a couple is sitting down at the kitchen table doing their budget, they aren't asking, oh gosh, can we afford $400,000? What they're really asking is, can we afford the monthly payment? This strategy lowers that number drastically for pennies on the dollar. And strategy number 4, I like to talk about seller financing, where they become a bank. And this is the heavy hitter in my opinion. This is where you unlock the business owners and the entrepreneurs and the wealthy investors that banks are ignoring. You become the bank. The buyer pays you a 15, 20% down payment, and then they make those monthly mortgage payments directly to you, usually at higher interest rates than what the bank would be getting. Now, I know the very common fear here, which is, well, what if they stop making payments? Well, let me walk you through this worst case scenario, because once you see it, you'll realize that a default can actually be one of the most profitable outcomes you can imagine. So let's say that you sold your house for $400,000. You collect a $50,000 down payment at closing. 3 years later, the buyer stops paying. Here's where you stand. So you've got that 50 grand down payment. That's yours, non-refundable. You keep 3 years of monthly payments, and that's cash in your pocket, and you get the house back. Why is that great? Well, because real estate historically goes up over time. Not always, but over time it does. And therefore, the house is very likely worth more now than when you sold it. In the stock market, let's just say that your investment crashes, you lose your principal. But in seller financing, if the deal crashes, you keep the principal, you retain the asset, you keep all the cash flow, and you get to put the asset back on the market or keep it. It's the only investment strategy I could think of where the worst case creates a massive windfall of cash. And for strategy number 5, I like to bring up a lease option. And this is a little bit different from seller financing, because in seller financing, the title is usually transferred and you become the bank. In a lease option, you actually retain the title in your name and the buyer becomes sort of like a tenant, and they lease the home for say 12 to 24 months with the option, not the obligation, to buy at a pre-agreed upon price. So here's how that works. So let's say the buyer pays an upfront option fee or consideration, often 5% of the price. So on a $400,000 home, that's about $20,000 instant cash in your pocket, and it's not refundable. Then they pay the monthly rent. Now, if you want, a portion of that rent can get credited toward their down payment if they exercise the option to buy. And this is perfect for the self-employed entrepreneur who made $200,000 last year, but they kind of write it all off. Or the family recovering from a medical bankruptcy who just needs 12 months to fix their credit. And because you still hold the title, if they stop paying rent or violate the lease, you're not foreclosing, you're evicting. And in most states, that's a 30 to 60 day process instead of a 6-month foreclosure. Again, your state timelines might vary. I would check in your state. But either way, you're protected and they're building credit toward ownership. This way you've created a win-win. Now, here's how this gets really powerful. You can stack them. You don't just have to choose one of these strategies. So you could advertise all of them in your listing. So let's pretend your description reads this: assumable 3.5% VA loan available, seller will consider rate buy down, owner financing available to qualified buyers, and lease purchase options considered. What just happened there? Well, you just made your listing relevant to 5 buyer groups that everybody else is ignoring. And when that many more buyers want to see your home, guess what happens? A bidding war. I've seen this happen countless times. A seller advertised owner financing, they created a feeding frenzy, and a cash investor swooped in with a full price offer just to win the home. The seller never even had to finance a dime themselves. They just had to indicate that they were flexible. And this is how you turn a home from a commodity into a scarce asset. You're not lowering your standards. You're raising the number of people who can compete for what you're offering. So let me address the most common objection I hear about all of this, which is, my friend, the real estate agent, says we should just drop the price. Well, of course they're saying that. That's the easiest path for them to convert a deal. Faster commission check, less paperwork, just another cookie cutter deal. But the question we have to ask is, what's the best path for you? I mean, are your incentives truly aligned here? $10,000 price reduction costs you $10,000, but it only saves the buyer about $60 a month. These creative strategies that we talked about, on the other hand, well, they solve the buyer's real problem. That's monthly affordability for a fraction of the cost that you would spend in a price reduction. So don't be a lazy seller. With these strategies, you are going to get multiple offers and very likely a faster sale than anybody else out there you're competing against. And here's what happens next. And this is where most for sale by owners panic. And it's the last card that agents have to play. It's fear. They're going to tell you that, well, fine, but this paperwork, it's going to destroy you and that you're going to get sued and you need them there to protect you. So that's why I made this video right here, to shut that argument down, where I'm going to walk you through exactly how to bulletproof your closing without an agent and without the risk. We will see you there. Thanks for listening to the Foolproof FSBO podcast. For free tools and step-by-step guides to sell your home with confidence, head on over to foolprooffsbo.com/podcast. That's foolprooffsbo.com/podcast. And we'll see you next week.